Welcome to Summary Sunday. My name is L.A. Kingsdave, and tonight I got with me Blake. I have Dave, aka Abe Froman, and we also have Janetta, aka Rexy. I don't really know how to pronounce it, but and
Very
tonight
close enough.
is okay. And tonight we're basically just it's gonna be a brief discussion on the summary of the week in hockey and what's gonna happen going forward this week. So, Blake and Dave and Janetta, how are you guys doing tonight? You guys have anything in particular to discuss?
Well, I don't really think there was a whole lot to discuss. Uh, just basically get everyone primed on the NHL action from yesterday and tonight, and looking ahead into tomorrow. And also, of course, be taking your Twitter questions at the Twitter podcast that is at Our Hockey Cast.
I hate Patrick Kane. That's all I'm gonna say.
I love
All
that.
His sellies, I think, are quite marvelous.
He's on a whole different level with his sellies, but
Oh.
yeah, I am not a fan of him this series.
Well,
I saw that one picture of him stroking his little rag tail like he was Anakin Skywalker, and it was great.
Cool.
Did nobody else see that?
I think
I
missed
did. I
that one.
did see it, but his mullet is so bad that it's good sometimes.
yes.
It's one of those where he doesn't have flow, but it's markedly terrible.
I don't approve of mullets, but on Patrick Kane it works.
It's recognizable. That would be the word, best word to describe Patty Kane's mullet. But anyway, we will begin with Saturday's action. Two NHL games, two thrilling NHL games, I must say. We'll begin with the day game, and we'll look over the scoring summary from it too. The Montreal Canadiens and the Boston Bruins. The series will now head into Montreal tied at 1 with a 5-3 Boston Bruins victory over Montreal. Boston got on the board first. Daniel Paille got his first of postseason at 13:02 in the first. He was assisted by Soderberg and Mazzaros. But after that, it was all Montreal. The second period, just 109 left in the second period. Mike Weaver, assisted by Plekanec and Gallagher. And then 18:09 in the second, Thomas Vanek, who is known by most Bruins fans as the Bruins Killer. He certainly has a past history with Boston. He was assisted by Subban and Pacioretty. In the third period, 6:30 in the third, Vanek again. He was assisted by Subban and Desharnais. Both Vanek goals were on the power play. Montreal really looked to have it in the bag, really, especially that second period when Boston was. They were just very frustrated. They were playing very frustrated most of that second period, or essentially all of that second period, most of the beginning of the third period. And Montreal looked to have essentially a stranglehold on the series. But Boston fought back. Dougie Hamilton, his second of the postseason, assisted by Marchand and Bergeron, 10:56 in the third. And Bergeron, 14:17 in the third, assisted by Marchand, 16:28. Riley Smith, his third of the postseason, assisted by Krug and Chara. And the empty netter, Milan Lucic, assisted by Krejci and Miller. So once again, 5-3 Boston.
I think that.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh no. I think what I was most intrigued by was not only that Boston. Well, obviously Boston is a good team, and they were able to come back and overcome. But the fact that through two games now, their penalty kill has not been that good, and for a team that's as defensive orientated as Boston, I'm been a little bit surprised with how well Montreal's been scoring in that series. At least on the power play. Obviously, 5-on-5, Boston's easily better, but if Boston, who's a team that has this season taken a lot of penalties, I'd be a little bit worried about that through 2 games, especially now that Montreal's taken a game in Boston.
I've always thought if you wanted to be a team that is a true contender for the Stanley Cup, out of a whole plethora of things, managing that PK is a must.
Obviously,
But I guess. Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Tuukka Rask said that he did not play well in the first game. I didn't necessarily think that was entirely true, but he obviously did not play as well as Carey Price. And Carey Price, while the third period of Game 2 wasn't his finest hour, still he is outplaying Rask, and that's what Montreal needs right now is for him to step up.
And a lot of people looked at the goalies, and everyone's attention immediately, well, most everyone's attention immediately went towards Tuukka Rask, a very dynamic goaltender, certainly. He's got to be the clear-cut favorite to win the Vezina by now, but you still can't overlook Carey Price. The guy won the gold medal for Team Canada this year. And he's always just that very dynamic goaltender.
True. I think that even though I think somebody that needs to maybe play better 5-on-5, even though I know he scored 2 goals last game, if you watch that game, Thomas Vanek was pretty much absent aside from on the power play. He scored 2 goals, but they were both right in front of the net and on the power play.
They were deflection goals, though.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's another thing. And aside from that, like, yeah, he was in the right place at the right time and he helped score those goals, which is great, and that's what he's supposed to do. But aside from that, he was, like, where was he the rest of the game? So
Right. Mm-hmm.
he needs to be, as Mike Babcock once said, a 200-foot player, you know.
Well, Vanek doesn't really strike me as a big two-way player to begin
No.
with.
And I think the thing with Montreal's offense, I've said this many, many times, other than really probably Vanek or Pacioretty, there isn't a whole lot of other offensive or a whole lot of forwards on that team that I would consider very good. Montreal's forward depth, it just doesn't scream to me that it's like an all-star or a Stanley Cup caliber forward group.
No. I mean, Max Pacioretty and Pukanek and Vanek and a couple other guys are great, but their bottom 6, in my opinion, is not good enough for them to take a cup. They won last round, obviously playing well against a young Lightning group, but they still need either somebody else to step up on that third or fourth line and just get a little more depth there.
Mm-hmm. Shifting gears a little, I suppose there is a little bit of news to discuss from this game. It was a big story there, especially after Game 1. Of course, I am talking about some racist tweets that were sent out by a group of, I guess supposedly, allegedly, Bruins fans aimed at PK Subban after his Game 1 overtime winning goal. And the day after that, Bruins president of hockey operations, Cam Neely, released a statement and Subban himself responded to them, basically saying, "Well, they're just that's not the entire Boston fan base," is what Subban essentially said. Um, I guess whichever, Dave, your thoughts on this tidbit?
I think the
I
whole
actually like
recent.
how
Sorry,
Saban
go ahead.
handled the whole thing.
What's that, Janetta?
I like how he handled the whole thing. I mean, he wasn't, I watched the interview that he gave today, and he handled it very classy. He said it's not all of the Bruins, and I love their fan base, and they're great, and um, it's just some people, and I'm not going to hold it against them. And I thought that was great.
Yeah.
And Dave, you had a point.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of I'm at the point now where I'm just like, it's been talked about so much that, there's still hockey going on. Let's not make the series about what was said by a group of, not even a group, I mean, a very large group of people. Because obviously they're not, I wouldn't call them hockey fans or even Bruin fans, so if they're going to say stuff like that.
Oh yeah.
And it was said too on Dave and I mentioned this on a previous podcast, but with Neely, with his short statement, it kind of to me it just kind of came off as we still got business to take care of. Let's not worry about what was said. Let's just move on, get it over with.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's the right thing to do in the playoffs because you move on from game to game. In the playoffs, everything is the next game.
Oh yeah.
You can't make it something that lingers. You can't make it a deal where people are gonna, keep talking about and make it a talking point. So you make it short. You move on to the next game and hope that it's not a big deal to the players. And if you feel like it's something that's going to affect the players, well, obviously P.K. Subban said that it's not a big deal to him, and that he doesn't feel that it's something that's going to affect him. So good for him.
I just love how all this was handled by everyone involved. It's all behind everyone now. They're ready to move on with the series. It's especially after Game 2. It's essentially non-existent by now, I guess. No one's discussing that one anymore. It's all about hockey now. And go ahead.
Just moving on to the other game last night.
Yes.
Obviously, a great game last night from just a hockey standpoint, and not just saying that because I'm a Kings fan, but from a hockey standpoint, last night's Ducks-Kings game was extremely entertaining. Very close. I think the shots were 36-35.
Yep.
And both teams had a ton of opportunities. Marian Gaborik coming up huge with the tying goal with 7 seconds left, and then with the game winner in overtime. From my standpoint, obviously as a Kings fan, it was great, but just as a hockey fan in general, you don't see games that close all the time, and especially it could have gone either way. Alec Martinez with a huge save as a defenseman on Corey Perry in overtime, and maybe, I mean that might be. I don't really think that's a turning point, but we lost Robin Regeer in that game, and we're already down Willie Mitchell as far as defenseman goes. I don't know how that's going to play going down the road, but I think that this game or this series is going to go 6 or 7 myself.
I would be pretty shocked if it went less than 7.
Oh. And quickly going over the score sheet, the Kings defeat Anaheim 3-2 in overtime. LA gets on the board first, 9:04 in the first. A power play goal scored by Alec Martinez, assisted by Gaborik and Kopitar. And 11:41 in the first, Matt Bolesky got his second to tie things up for Anaheim. He was assisted by Getzlaff and Fowler. The second period was a scoreless second period. Um, and Teemu Solani opened up scoring for Anaheim in the third, 8:08 in the third, assisted by Maroon and Getzlaff. And essentially, it looked to me that Anaheim was just playing very defensive-minded. They were just locking things down in their own zone, which in turn looked to me like they would have that game in the bag. But Marion Gaborik, 1953 in the third, gets his fourth of the postseason, assisted by Richards and Kopitar. And then in overtime, 12:07 in the first, it was Gaborik getting his fifth, which I believe would at least tie him for the lead in postseason goals, if I'm not mistaken. He was assisted by Kopitar and Dowdy. I guess looking into this series in general, and speaking about Anaheim, and more specifically their goaltending, I wasn't surprised to see Hiller out there, especially for Game 1, because LA probably would have, is more than likely, I'd say, a better team than Dallas. Anaheim used Anderson most of the Dallas series. I guess just get them some postseason reps, perhaps. I would, excuse me, I would not be surprised though to see Anderson out there for at least one game. And if it happens, just imagine the learning experience he'll get from someone not even on his team. He'll be looking at Jonathan Quick over on the other side of the ice, and looking at a very top caliber goalie, very dynamic goalie. Just kind of learning from him and having to apply that knowledge almost immediately after. I think that would be as much of an interesting goalie matchup as Hiller and Quick.
Yeah, for sure. I don't know, Janetta, did you happen to catch that game last night?
I didn't catch the beginning of it, but I caught the last half, I think, of the second, and I saw the third. It was, I mean, I couldn't hear the commentary or anything like that. I don't know. I'm not happy with the outcome of it at all. I have no words. I may have cried.
Well,
Hey, were you
No,
watching
but the LA was very good. I expected him to score more than they actually did.
I think I watched. I honestly didn't even watch OT because I think I turned the game off with about 2 minutes to go just because I was tired. I wanted to go to bed. And then I get on the sub next day and it says, "Oh, well, Gaborik scored." I think just from what I kind of saw though, Anaheim has to work on their end game for sure, especially with a team like LA because LA and Boston are just they're so similar, I think, and the way that I would describe the both of those teams, if I had to use a word, it'd be resilient. So with LA, it's a team you can't really sleep on. If you're up a goal, if you're up two, it doesn't matter. Those are teams you gotta shut them down and close them out to, when the game's on the line. So if Anaheim's gonna want a chance in this series, they're gonna have to work on their end game.
mm-hmm.
Right, close them out. And that's always been a problem with Boudreaux's teams in general.
Before we
have
move,
a few questions from Twitter.
Quite a few questions.
Quite a few, actually. Yeah.
I kind of like this
one.
one, though, from Austin Wright at Am I Doing It Right? If you could have an NHL all-hair team, who would be on it?
Well, obviously Carlson on the back end.
You probably have Letang too on the back end as well. That'd be the first defensive pairing. I would go with David Booth, Because in my opinion, he has the best flow in the NHL. And anybody who wants to disagree with me, well, you can just suck on that. I'd also go with TJ Oshie. He has some great flow as well. Who else?
In goal, you got to go with Braden Holtby.
Yep.
And I knew that was going to come up. If nobody said it, I was going to say it.
I'd say playoff Patrick Kane just because of the mullet.
Let's see, who else?
I would probably put probably the obvious choice in goalie, Braden Holtby.
For center, I don't know. That's a tough one.
Yeah.
I don't think there's many forwards that have great hair that I can think of.
Yeah.
Mostly
Center depth needs to work on their flow, that's for sure. You heard it here first, folks. Center depth. Centers have terrible flow.
I will say, Ryan Kessler does have a beautiful head of lettuce.
Yes, this is true, though. Yes.
So there we go. We have our center.
There we go.
Alrighty.
Also, we have a question for Dave from Twerk for Twerk. Why is Minnesota not a hockey state? And why is Ron Green the best owner ever?
Uh-oh.
Next question, Brooksy.
Well, the next question from her would be, what is David going to name his potential brood?
Oh my God. Next question, Brooksy.
Why is clam chowder better than hot dish?
Next question, Brooksy. Are all these questions seriously just trolling me? This is terrible.
Okay, as a non-partial person here, I gotta say hot dish is definitely better than clam chowder. Sorry.
Yeah.
I don't even know what that is, so I can't even...
Hot dish is basically a casserole.
No, it's not.
I mean, come on. If you're not a fan of clam chowder, then it's better.
Janetta,
Yeah, I'm not a fan of chowder at all.
the basics to a hot dish are a starch, so it could be a potato, it could be tater tots, could be anything like that. It's usually a meat product, vegetables, and a soup of some kind, usually cream of mushroom or cream of chicken.
I like everything that you just named. That's my favorite.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Here's a good question from @Ari Raid. Please discuss the Andrew Shaw injury and see how many nice things you can make David say about Shawzy.
I didn't even see the injury, but if I remember, it was off a Clayton Stoner hit. As far as nice things to say about Andrew Shaw, well, he has feet for hands, and he knows how to use his shin pads well.
I think the thing with Clayton Stoner, I don't think he's necessarily dirty per se. He's just not that bright.
Clayton Stoner, he is not a good defenseman. Whenever I think of a shutdown defenseman, Clayton Stoner is not the guy I would want shutting down.
Yeah.
I am really hoping that he's gone next year.
Ari says, stop avoiding the questions, Dave.
And I told her, shut up, Ari. I answered one.
Is Hossa actually the pink Energizer Bunny?
I think that is very evident that yes, he is.
How much could Hossa host if Hossa could host? Why is Hossa God? Why is Riley Smith hot?
Janetta, you want to answer that one?
Yeah.
Yes, we'll. We just wanted to get you your notoriety there, Aisha. You're welcome.
I would take Patrick Kane over Riley Smith. I'm just saying.
Ooh.
Uh-oh.
Ooh.
I've never.
A little bit of controversy here in the
let's take a look at Riley
Sunday
Smith.
recap.
Oh, Riley Smith is ugly.
Yeah.
I think we all know my preference for blondes over dark hair. So.
Riley Smith has a 4.5 head. He's not quite a 5 head, but he's not a 4 head.
However, I would take the other Smith brother.
Well,
Moving on to tonight's games,
yes.
or today's games, today.
I would probably go with the evening games.
We had, you want to break down the Chicago game, Blake?
Certainly. Chicago takes a 2-0 lead over the Minnesota Wild after a 4-1 victory. Looking at the box score here, the captain, Jonathan Toews, got his 4th of the postseason. He was assisted by Hossa and Bickle. That came at 11:02 in the first. And in the second, Brandon Saad, who, by the way, broke his scoreless streak of, I don't know how long it was, but it was awfully long. He was assisted by Bickle and Seabrook. And Minnesota's lone goal came from Cody McCormick, 2 minutes in the third, assisted by Stoner and Holla. And then Bickle got his 5th of the year, so Gabrick would be tied for the lead. He was assisted by Hossa and Jalmerson. And the empty netter was scored by Brandon Saad. He now has 2 in the postseason. He was assisted by Hossa and Jalmerson. I guess we'll turn things over to whichever Dave volunteers first with their thoughts.
Dave, you go first.
Well, I'll be honest, I was out today. I did not watch the game. So
All right, well, I'll go first then.
I apologize.
That game could have easily been 7-1. It was not a good showing by the Wild. I never thought I would see the day where somebody was actually moving slower than Heatley on the ice, but it happened with Matt Molson. He was on the line with Koivu and Coyle, and he was actually slowing that line down, so he got demoted to the 4th line. That's how bad he was playing. Pominville has also been non-existent in the first 2 games, which that is not good at all. I think in the power play on the first game, he had a couple of missed nets, which that absolutely can't happen. And it wasn't even like they were close to a missed net. I mean, they were way wide. So the Wild, just they're, the 5 in front of Briz, they're not playing well. Today, especially, they gave up too many odd man rushes, which you can't do. You can't really do against a team like this. And Briz played a good game. He doesn't play a great game. I just think that's just kind of, he's getting older for a netminder. I like Briz, but I mean, I really don't see a scenario here where the Wild come out winning, unfortunately.
After seeing what he did in the Colorado series, would you have much preferred to see Darcy Kemper?
I mean, yeah, I'd rather see Kemper in net, but at the same time, too, I don't think that changes the results.
Well,
I don't think there's a way that the Wild comes out of this, no matter who's in net.
Just watching the way that we played in the first game, I mean, Kemper would have been letting in goals. A lot of Wild fans want to talk. Mm-hmm. A lot of Wild fans will want to talk him up and say that, they'll talk about Kemper like he's a Vezina goaltender. The kid's good, but nobody wants to accept the fact that, it just our big names just did not show up today. Koivu had a terrible back-check effort on the Toews goal, which Briz actually made a really nice save because it was Hossa on a breakaway. It was one of the most athletic saves I've seen. And then Koivu just allows Toews to just walk right in and get the rebound. And, I mean, the gif of the goal even shows that Koivu's back there. He's just coasting. Parisi led to a pretty bad goal, too. Suter went down on the ice, but Parisi decided to play the puck instead of the man, and that allowed Hossa to just blow right by him. Not a good showing from our top 6.
Now, I still think that Minnesota's biggest issue from, I want to say, a fairly decent portion of the regular season and this first round in these 2 games is their inability to play on the road.
Yep.
However, I believe you said something along these lines last round. They're much better at home.
They are. I think, though, the reason to me why we won those 2 games at home against Colorado is our crowd was ridiculously loud. in Colorado, that team's a young team. They really don't have a whole lot of playoff experience. Chicago does. So no matter how loud Excel gets, it's not going to phase them.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel like, even though you're down 2-0 right now, how do you feel about your team going forward?
Um, if I don't see improvement in Game 3, we're going to get swept. Optimistically,
What changes do you think Mike Yeo can make that would affect it, or do you think it's just a lack of talent?
Say that again, the first part about Yo.
Like, do you think that there's a defense? Like, he's obviously, as the home coach, he's going to have lineup changes in his favor, as he's going to be able to put guys out. But do you think that that's going to make enough of a difference to matter, or do you think it's just you don't have the talent to compete with Chicago?
I think we have the talent to at least stay competitive. I said this in a previous podcast too. We're just drained emotionally and physically from the Colorado series.
That's what I figured was going to happen. You guys were going to go to a bunch of games, like 6, 7 games, and then either whether it was the Hawks or the Blues, you guys just weren't going to have a chance because of those.
Yeah, I mean, Game 6 was that was an emotional roller coaster. It had to have been for the players. I mean, you look at Parisi when he scored the game winner, just how pumped up he was. And then, he had to go and play Game 7, which that was trench warfare practically. I think with the last change, Yoel's probably going to be using Suter more, just to try to at least slow down the Blackhawks, just because their top 6 is just ridiculous, and even their bottom 6 too. I wouldn't be surprised to see it split going to see a home split for the Wild, 1-1. But if they don't come out to play for Game 3, then I think a sweep would be very likely.
And I still believe that just whoever would end up stealing a road game would have a very good chance of winning the series.
Yep.
All right. The next game, the other game from this evening, the Pittsburgh Penguins and New York Rangers. That series is now tied at 1. They will be heading to the Madison Square Garden after a 3-0 Pittsburgh Penguins victory. Marc-Andre Fleury with the 22-save shutout. No scoring in the first period. Chris Letang got his second of the postseason, 10-26 in the second, assisted by Malkin and Kunitz. And in the third period, a power play goal, 16:30 in the third. Jussi Jokinen got his fourth, assisted by Neal and Letang. And Evgeny Malkin gets his fourth on the empty netter, assisted by Chris Letang. I guess, Dave, your overall thoughts on, I guess, just the series.
I think Fleury has stepped up a lot. Like, he has come through a lot. I didn't expect him to be that awesome. I really just expected another choke out of him.
Now, do keep in mind last year, though, this is kind of a, on one hand, Pittsburgh did make it to the Eastern Conference Finals, and that's when playoff flurry was activated. And on the other hand, through those first 2 rounds, they also had Tomas Vokoun to use there. This time around, these first 2 rounds, the first round in these first 2 games, it's essentially been all Fleury. So,
how many shutouts does he have now?
Hmm?
How many shutouts does he have, like, since the playoffs started? What, 2, 3?
I think this is his first one in the playoffs. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
Is it?
Yeah. So I'm still kind of waiting with bated breath, seeing just where he'll go from here, and I'll be saying where he goes from here after every game, really.
I think he's got a lot to prove this year.
Mm-hmm.
Just to kind of quiet all the naysayers. So it'll be interesting. I think the shutout's a really good momentum swing, not only for the team but for him as well, just mentally. So as much as I don't like the Penguins, I really don't like the Rangers either because doubles for life. Um, so I'd like to see them improve from this and keep the, just keep the momentum going for them. Because I'd also really like to see a Boston Pittsburgh final in the Eastern Conference, and I'd like to see Boston just beat the crap out of Pittsburgh again.
Tonight, Pittsburgh was pretty dominant. I'm wondering, though, with the Rangers going back home, they've been playing really well in Madison Square Garden through the playoffs and even before that. Alain Vigneault obviously gets the matchups that he wants against Crosby and Malkin when he's at home. Do you think that there's anybody, though, that can shut down either one of those lines for the Rangers, or do you think it's just going to be more of the same where they're basically trying to keep pace with the Penguins and hope for the best, or do you think that they actually have a chance right now to be able to come out stronger than the Penguins based on matchups, aside from the third and fourth line? Because the Penguins' third and fourth line isn't that strong.
Mm. I have a pretty high opinion of Dan Girardi and Matthew McDonough. I think those guys can do it. But when I also think of the Rangers, I really don't think of shut down, especially their forward lines. I really don't think of shut down two-way players either. So it'll be interesting to see.
I look back to the first round matchup with Columbus, and what I saw in one game especially, and what I would have expected to have continued in the entirety of the series. For those of you that were on our hockey, and I think it was after game one, there was an album of gifts of Brandon Dubinsky, really, just messing with Crosby, just trying his very best to get in his head and kind of throw him off his game a little, and that that went quite well for Columbus. I think they knew that if you get Crosby off his game, then you will have a really good chance. Crosby's a very dynamic scorer. He's their captain. He's essentially a huge factor in what makes that team go.
Do you think that New York is missing Callahan a lot right now? Do you think that Marty St. Louis? I know St. Louis had a good first round, but do you think that right now they're missing it? I think with or without St. Louis, they probably could have still beat Philadelphia. So, do you think that his defensive play against a guy like Malkin or Crosby would have made a difference in this series compared to St. Louis?
I think a little. I mean, because Callahan's a grinder type.
Mm-hmm.
And I also find it. I find it a little funny that he's a top six player because I think on any other team he'd probably be a third line grinder. True. That's just kind of the style he plays.
Yeah. And again, I've said this a few times concerning Marty. You did mention he's having he had a fairly good first round. I think he and really just the whole Rangers offense, I think they're slowly but surely starting to come together. And I wouldn't be surprised if the Rangers are looking at what Columbus did to Pittsburgh. Have that one guy that'll just be a thorn in Crosby's side, and take advantage of getting him off his game. Just taking a huge advantage of that.
All right. Well, we have another question, which is from Ari. She says, "Why is Nathan McKinnon and Druin's bromance the best next gen bromance?" I don't know if that's really the case, honestly. They're not going to be on the same team, and as much as junior players and college players, I mean, Oshie and Taves played together in college. They still love each other. Jack
Mm-hmm.
Johnson and Sidney Crosby still love each other from playing in high school, but once you get to the pro level and you're playing against each other, it's a completely different story.
Oh yeah.
I think that Druin's going to be awesome. I'm glad he got another. I'm glad he went down to the minors or to the juniors because he didn't need to be on Tampa Bay this year. So, and I think Dave and I talked about this before, but it never hurts to have somebody stay in the juniors for a year if they don't need to be up here. And
Oh
I
yeah.
think that Druin's going to be a beast once he gets up here. But as far as bromance goes, once you get to a level like the NHL where you're competing, I mean Doughty and Logan Couture, they were bromance until they got to San Jose and LA. You look at a guy like Nieto and Emerson Needham, same thing out here. Best friends until they got to NHL. Once you get to the NHL, it's a completely different story. You're playing against each other. You're playing for money. You're playing in the big leagues. That bromance very quickly goes away. So,
I think the perfect example of that would be Boston and Detroit in the first round with the Smith brothers. Um, it was really just no holds barred between them. Um,
oh yeah,
you're
you
you're
very you
you're
and you've
oh
seen
yeah,
other
yeah, go ahead.
brothers. I mean, we've seen brothers in the NHL in the past fight each other, literally.
Oh yeah.
So there's not much of a bromance in hockey unless they're on your team, in my opinion.
hmm You're playing for your team, your city, all of that. You're playing for your pride, and yeah, you just can't let bromances or actual brotherhoods, in a somewhat perverse way, get in the way of team pride.
Well, you do have other bromances too that like Jeff Carter and Mike Richards. Mike Richards pushed really hard to get Jeff Carter here in LA.
Hmm
Or say Gretzky pushed really hard to get Yari Curry. Um, obviously, this is my bias here in LA, but I know there's other cases like that throughout the NHL where you see a guy push really hard for somebody like that. But with Nathan McKinnon and Druin, they're not going to go anywhere other than where they're at right now. So that bromance level is going to drop off slightly because they're not going to play together anytime soon. With the fact that they were such high picks going to other teams,
hmm I
the
will
re- the
say,
real the only real true bromance is obviously the Sedin brothers. So
yes, yes. I will say on a side note regarding McKinnon, what I'm looking forward to is I think it's uh, next year's next off season's draft. I think is when shoot, I forget his name. Connor McDavid. I believe the next off season's draft is that when he's draft eligible.
Yes,
yeah.
2015.
Okay, okay. Um, I would actually quite see kind of like another battle of that Crosby and Ovechkin. I think McKinnon and McDavid. That would be really fun to see right there.
McKinnon doesn't really strike me as a pure goal scorer, though.
No, no.
The kid's talented, but that's the kind of thing with Ovi and Sid is, it's it's hard to make an argument that he isn't the best player in the world, and Ovi is probably one of the purest goal scorers in the league. You could argue Stamkos, but for the sake of the Ovi Sid, we'll say Ovi is. McDavid, everyone's saying that he's a lot like Crosby. He's from Nova Scotia, and all that. McKinnon is kind of the same, maybe not as, you know, very skilled guy, but he's a playmaker. So I don't think we're going to see another. I don't think we're going to see another Ovi-Sid rivalry. That an NBC made Ovi-Sid rivalry for quite a while.
I will say Ari is saying that McKinnon and Druin have an epic romance because McKinnon visited him over the Olympic break, but also at the same time, Sidney Crosby trains with people from all different kinds of teams out here in Southern California during the off season. He trains with all the Kings players and with other players that come out here, and they all do the same thing. So yeah, they might all love each other, but when you're playing against each other on a nightly basis, there's no bromance there because you're competing against each other on a professional level.
Just to make Ari mad, to answer her question as to why McKinnon and Druin's bromance is the best next gen one, it's because Taze and Kane have an expiration date. So there. That one's for you, Ari.
Alrighty. We will look ahead into tomorrow's action. Again, 2 games to look forward to tomorrow. 6:30 Central Time. A back-to-back, an interesting back-to-back there. The Pittsburgh Penguins and the New York Rangers. I guess the question I pose here is what a back-to-back would mean for both teams.
I don't think it means that much when you're traveling that close. On the East Coast, you have train travel and bus travel instead of plane travel like you do on the West Coast. I know I don't want to sound like a West Coast bias kind of guy, but the logistics of things are West Coast teams have to travel more, aside from the rare occasion when you see like Anaheim and LA, and this is the first time that's ever happened. But for the most part, I don't think it matters all that much because you don't have to travel that far. If it was, say, Tampa Bay and, Montreal in last round, yeah, they have to fly and they have to travel far. But if you have a back-to-back, when the teams are so close and they don't have that much to travel, I don't think it's as big of a deal.
Yeah. But I guess, we already did kind of, just a little bit. Actually, I guess we'll kind of go into the broader picture here and just talk about this whole series in general from Pittsburgh's standpoint and from the Rangers' standpoint. We'll start with Pittsburgh and what to look for from them with Dave.
Which series is Pittsburgh?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I wasn't even paying attention. What was the question?
I guess it's just basically just the general view of the series and what you see from Pittsburgh.
Okay. I'm gonna be interested to see how well New York plays at home and how much of a factor the crowd becomes. Pittsburgh, I mean, they're highly skilled. That's a playoff team with a lot of experience. So it'll just be interesting to see. Lundqvist too has, if I remember the tweet right, he has terrible stats when his team's leading. I think he was 0-11, 0-12. That might have just been for elimination games, but I'd like to see Lundqvist step up and be able to close out the Penguins quick.
I actually don't think Lundqvist played that bad this evening. That first goal, I don't exactly remember what that first goal looked like actually, but the second goal, a big reason that goal was scored was a defensive miscue by Mark Stahl.
No, Lundqvist has been pretty good. But that's one thing about Lundqvist is he's always pretty good. The thing is, Lundqvist hasn't been able to steal games in the playoffs throughout his career.
Mm-hmm.
Very rarely. So when you look at a guy like him who has all the skill sets and somebody who they rely on throughout the season, if he wants to be considered one of the best goalies of all time, then he's going to have to start stealing games in the playoffs for his team because they have a decent defense. They have I think one of the top 5 defenses, top 5, top 10 defenses this season. They should be able to at least score enough to where he could steal a game in the playoffs because your goalie's your most important player in the playoffs. And throughout the history of the Rangers with Lundqvist, he's never been a guy who carried them, and you need that from your elite goaltender. So I think a lot of this, like, you don't want to put pressure on one player in particular, but at the same time, your goalie needs to be your best player in the playoffs, and he needs to do that.
I think regarding the Rangers' forward depth, again, as I stated earlier, um, slowly but surely they are coming around, but that progression cannot be slow anymore. They have to do it like right now, essentially. They got their 2 games at home to look forward to now, and if they want this series, they have to play just lights out at home. Not just getting a win, but they would have to absolutely dominate. All
Just
right.
hope that Crosby doesn't get hot.
Yes.
He's been
And
kind of disappointing in these playoffs, but they haven't needed him yet. But at the
yes.
same time, when you're the MVP of the league, which I'm guessing he's going to be, in the playoffs, you still need him to show up. And I know he has in the past, but he
I
has
think
not.
I think the Penguins are going to win this thing. They're
Why is
going to
that?
take the series. I, well, one, I really do want to see a Bruins and Penguins, but um, I don't know. He's doing good, and I don't. I just think they're going to come back. If Malkin and Crosby are going to start scoring, and I think they're going to come back and get it. I'd much
And
rather the Rangers get it, but I don't think it'll happen.
and with the points you brought up with Lundqvist earlier, Dave, I would also be inclined then to see Pittsburgh get this series because looking at the goalie matchup, I think of course, Fleury gets a lot of flack from his performance in past postseasons. But when we look at specifically stealing games and who has the ability to steal games, I would be more inclined to give that advantage to Fleury.
I would agree.
Yeah. Over historic timeline, yeah, Fleury. I mean, I know he struggled the last few years, but yeah.
Mm-hmm. All right. And the second game tomorrow, again, game 2, Los Angeles and Anaheim. Los Angeles holding with the game 1 victory. Again, we'll just give our thoughts on the series in general, and we'll start with Dave, the Kings fan.
Well, obviously the first game was really close. I expected it to be close again because Anaheim's played us so well all season. And I think that once again it's come down to quick. Anaheim has better offense than we do throughout the season. And right now, with Regier being hurt last game and Willie Mitchell already out, we're probably going to have to rely on either Jeff Schultz. And if anybody knows Jeff Schultz, they know that he's not great. So We might pull him up from the minors. We already did, but we might actually have to start him, which is not good for us because him and Matt Green together are both very slow defensemen who could be physical, but they don't. They just aren't great. So I think Anaheim might abuse that, especially with lineup changes as far as being the home team. So, in my opinion, unless somehow our power play has scored in 6 straight games now. If we can keep that rolling, Kopitar has points in every game in the playoffs. That's great, but it's going to come down to Jonathan Quick versus whoever's starting for Anaheim, and Bruce Boudreau has been very quiet about who he's starting each game. So, I just think, I personally think Anaheim's going to win tomorrow. Although I'm going to be at the game, and obviously I'm rooting for the Kings, but if our defense falters at all, then I think we're screwed.
Now, and the one thing with the West especially is basically the home team, the teams with the home ice advantage in these series. I believe every single one has come out on top. I think with the exception of Minnesota in the first round, wasn't
I
it?
think there's been 3 losses at home for the
Yes.
West.
Mm-hmm.
Well, 2 of those were San Jose,
And then the one was Game 7 for Colorado, Minnesota.
and then the Anaheim game last time.
Oh yes, and St. Louis also lost Game 5 at home. So about
It
5.
really is just the West is so close, and these teams are so well matched, and it's about those changes you can make when you're when you're the home team, and then the favor that you have as far as matching up who you want against other people, and that's why I think that Anaheim has the advantage in Game 2 if Regueir's not in and our defense isn't at 100%.
And I think the interesting thing in this series with the home ice advantage is I don't think the home ice advantage for either of these teams would be just incredibly dominant with how incredibly close Los Angeles and Anaheim are. Um, but regarding Los Angeles and regarding Jonathan Quick, one thing I've said about Quick several times now, and not to discount him in any way, but I think the only time you can see that just that very dynamic performance from Quick is when you can get that equally dynamic defense. If the defense isn't there, most of the time I see, I don't. Quick isn't there.
Right. Well, Jeanette, I don't know if you have anything else to throw in about this series or not.
About the Ducks and Kings series?
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I didn't pay a whole lot of attention to you guys in the regular season. So I can't say anything, but I don't know. I'm kind of rooting for the Ducks, man. I'm sorry.
It's all right. We have a question from Mari. She says, if you had to pick an MVP thus far, who is it? Playoff MVP.
Now, playoff MVP, of course, in the regular season, you'd probably be inclined to say Sidney Crosby. But playoff MVP, I guess I'll let one of you answer first.
I would probably pick.
All right, go ahead, Dave.
Yeah, I'd probably pick Kopitar. I think at this point. Yeah, I mean, he's just he's what is it, a point in every game? Is that right for the Kings?
Yeah, he scored in every game so far, and he's leading in scoring.
Yeah, and plus, I mean, he's a really good two-way player as well, and I think he just gets overlooked quite a bit too. I think, although I was pretty happy to see that he was nominated for the Selke this year, but Yeah, playoffs MVP. I gotta go. I gotta go with Kopitar, especially with the reverse sweep that the Kings pulled off. I mean, that was huge.
Yeah, I'm gonna second that one. You might think I'm biased, but once again, it's when you have a guy that scored in 8 straight games, at least a point in 8 straight games, and is leading the scoring overall on a team that was able to accomplish that. I think that you got to look at him right now. So
I third that one too. It looked to me, especially in the San Jose series when LA was on the brink of being swept, it looked to me that Kopitar essentially just put the whole team on his back and led the charge to get that win in the first round. And I would expect more of this kind of leadership role, this huge leadership role that I've seen, especially in the first round so far from Kopitar.
Janetta, who's your playoff MVP right now?
I don't know. I'm gonna go with Patrick Kane. I don't know. You don't expect him to score, and he just somehow makes it in and just goes in there. I feel like, I don't know. I'm just gonna go with Patrick Kane.
He is pretty magical on the ice with what he does.
Yes.
He really is. Like, you just sit there and you're like, how did he just make this happen? What is this?
I know a lot of Hawks fans will want Hulsa to be to get a look at for Conn Smythe. The thing is, though, if you take Hulsa out of the equation, I mean, that team still has, they still have Jonathan Taves. They have Kane, they have Sharp. So they have guys that can step up if Hulsa's not there. LA, I just think for LA, if you take Kopitar out, they really don't have a player like that can replace him.
No. Well, I mean, Kane is tied for the league lead in goal scoring in the playoffs, and he's second in plus minus right now. So obviously he's doing his job too. So that's a pretty good pick too.
Ari doesn't like our picks since we're all agreeing with each other.
Well, I mean, obviously she's biased, but
all right, fine. I'll say Zach Parise, even though he's radio silent today.
Mm-hmm. Well, all right. I'll say Tarasenko, even though we're not playing anymore. So yeah, there you go. I hope you are now happy, Ari.
I was gonna ask if I could pick somebody who wasn't even in the playoff run anymore, but
Jenna, it's fine. You could probably pick Taylor Swift.
that's okay. I would like to pick at least somebody who plays hockey.
All right, you can pick Suter then.
Oh God, no! You're gonna make me want to have nightmares.
Cyrone asks, how many Ben Bishop ramps have there been? Well,
there's no Cyrone, so there are no Ben Bishop rants.
Nope.
The thing is,
I don't think he should have gotten a nod for Vezina, though. That's pretty ridiculous.
I think.
I think even with the way that Montreal's playing, I don't know if even Ben Bishop would have been able to save the Lightning. I mean, I don't think it would have been a sweep because it's just Montreal totally outclassed the Lightning in pretty much all 4 games. I don't know how much Ben Bishop could have done. I love Ben Bishop this year. He was great. Obviously, he's a Vezina finalist, and I look forward to the Lightning, next season being a lot better, but
I don't know. I think Ben Bishop's Vezina nomination was more on the fact of what he did in the first half of the season. His first half of the season, he played great. Second half, not so much.
Mm-hmm. And I also certainly thought that injury towards the end of the season would just essentially kill any thoughts of a nomination.
I was pretty shocked. Yeah, I was pretty shocked to see his name listed as one of the 3 finalists.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we're up on an hour here, so I think we're going to wrap it up. But
yes, we're going
that
to
was summary of Sunday.
Wrap it up now.
Going over the last few things and talking about the series that they are. Do any of you guys have any points to make before we get off here?
Blackhawks are the devil.
I can second that.
That's a valid point, but
I don't know. They're growing on me, but no, I don't have I don't think I have anything.
Just everyone be sure to follow the podcast on Twitter at Our Hockey Cast. You can also check out our subreddit for those of you on Reddit. I suddenly forget the name of it. I think it's
our hockey cast. It's our hockey cast.
okay. Yeah. You can follow the hosts. You can follow Dave Gove here at LA Kings Dave. You can follow the other Dave at _Hobbs27. You can follow Janetta at Rixie, WRXIE. And you can follow me at Shat in my Kirk. Yes, I'm still a sucker for poop jokes at the age of 20.
And I would like to say that if you guys have something you want to talk about going forward on a podcast or something like that, throw it up at the
Yes.
subreddit, or just send us a message on Twitter or something like that, and let us know what discussion you'd like to hear from us going forward on any of the different podcasts, and we can break things down for you better.
Yes, and I don't think that's something I don't think we've actually ever touched on, but we do appreciate the people that listen in very much, and all of your feedback definitely is very appreciated. But yes, again, if you wish to leave feedback, or Twitter at Our Hockey Cast, the subreddit are Our Hockey Cast. This has been Our Hockey Cast, the Summary Sunday, and we are signing off.
Thank you so much for listening. You guys have a good night.